Lesson 12, English for Meetings. Today you're going to learn almost 100 practical English phrases to use in meetings. Many of them, such as the phrases for expressing opinions, agreeing and disagreeing, can also be used in other situations outside of work. Let's begin with a few vocabulary words. The verbs typically used with meeting are have and hold. You can also use schedule, arrange, or organize to talk about having a meeting in the future. When you participate in a meeting, you go to the meeting or attend the meeting. A well-organized meeting will have an agenda. That's a list of topics, often called items, that will be discussed. In some meetings, one person keeps notes that will be the official record of the meeting. These are called the meeting minutes. Why hold a meeting? There are a number of different reasons. One is to brainstorm ideas. Brainstorming is creating a lot of different ideas so that they can later be analyzed, evaluated, and the best ones can be selected. Brainstorming is often done as a first step in a project, before there is a definite plan. Another reason to hold a meeting is to develop a strategy and allocate tasks. A strategy is a plan for completing a project, and to allocate tasks means to assign specific items of work to specific people. Meetings are also held to collaborate, work together on projects, and give updates, reports of progress and current status. Finally, meetings are held to make decisions. Some meetings use a formal system of voting, in which a decision is made if it receives the majority, more than 50%, of the votes. Other meetings use a less formal system of decision-making, aiming for the group to come to a consensus. That's a general agreement. To start the meeting leader, who is called the chairperson or chair, may use one of these phrases. Hello everyone, thank you for coming today. Since everyone is here, let's get started. First, I'd like to welcome you all. If there are new people in the meeting, or people from different departments who might not know each other, the chairperson may introduce them. I'd like to take a moment to introduce. Please join me in welcoming. Sheila, would you like to introduce yourself? Finally, it's good to state the specific topic or objective of the meeting in order to focus the discussion. As you can see from the agenda, we'll be talking about I've called this meeting in order to. Our main goal today is to determine the budget for 2013, for example. Asking for opinions. Meetings often begin with the presentation of some information and then a request for opinions. To ask people for their opinions, you can say, what does everyone think about? I'd like to get your feedback on. What are your thoughts about? What are your views on? After one person has expressed his or her opinion, you can say, thanks, to acknowledge the opinion, and then use these phrases to ask for more people to respond. What does everyone else think? Are there any other comments? If there's a specific person who you would like to hear from, you can ask him or her directly by using these phrases. Susan, can we get your input? Would you like to add anything, Susan? Giving your opinion. Now let's learn some phrases for giving your opinion, with some detail in order to give you some flexibility in the way you express your opinion. To give a strong opinion, you can say this. I strongly believe that. I'm positive that. I'm convinced that. I have no doubt whatsoever that. There's no question that. This last phrase, there's no question that, is the strongest. To express a normal opinion, you can say, I think, I believe, or I feel that. From my point of view, in my experience, or I find that. Use these phrases to base your opinion on your experience. I'd say that, and to be honest. Use the phrase "to be honest" when you want to express a negative or critical opinion. The word honest is a diplomatic way to signal that you are going to say something negative or unpopular. Finally, to express a weak opinion, use these phrases. It seems to me that, it's possible that, I tend to think that, my initial reaction is. Use the phrase "my initial reaction is" to show that this is an opinion you haven't thought very deeply about. Agreeing and disagreeing. Once other people in the meeting have expressed their opinions, you can react by agreeing or disagreeing. Here are some appropriate phrases for this purpose, again, based on degree of strength. To strongly agree with someone, say, "I completely agree. I couldn't agree more. You're absolutely right." To give normal agreement, you can say, "Exactly. That's just how I see it. I'm with Peter on this." You can use this phrase, "I'm with Peter on this," to refer to another colleague's opinion. To show partial agreement, use these phrases. "Well, it depends. I agree with you up to a point, but..." This means that you agree with some of the opinion, but not all of it. "I agree with you in principle, but..." This means you agree with the opinion in theory, but not in practice. Disagreement. In English, saying "I disagree" can be a little too direct and may be considered impolite. Use one of these phrases instead to disagree diplomatically. "I'm afraid I disagree." "I'm not so sure about that." "I see it differently." "Yes, but..." "Not necessarily." Finally, here are some phrases for disagreeing strongly. The words "I'm sorry" make the phrase more polite. "I'm sorry, but I completely disagree." "I'm sorry, but I don't agree with that at all." Settling a disagreement. What do you do if you're in charge of a meeting and people are arguing? Use one of these phrases to settle the disagreement and continue the meeting. We don't seem to be getting anywhere with this, so perhaps we could discuss it further at another time. Let's move on. I think we're going to have to agree to disagree. Suggestions. If you'd like to make a suggestion or recommendation, you can use these phrases. The weaker phrases introduce an option as a possibility, and the stronger phrases give more emphasis to your belief that it is a good idea. Weak suggestion. We could. Why don't we? How about? What about? The phrases "we could" and "why don't we" are followed by the infinitive. For example, "We could invest in new technology." Why don't we invest in new technology? The phrases "how about" and "what about" are followed by the ing form. For example, how about investing in new technology? What about investing in new technology? Phrases for strong suggestions. We should. Let's. I suggest. I recommend. Again, we should and let's are followed by the infinitive, and I suggest and I recommend are followed by the ing form. Interrupting. At times, you might want to interrupt the discussion to add a point. Here are 3 polite ways to do that. May I have a word? Could I just say one thing? Excuse me, sorry for interrupting, but... Controlling the meeting. If you are controlling the meeting, you'll need these phrases to move the discussion to the next item on the agenda. I think we've spent enough time on this topic. Moving on. If nobody has anything else to add, let's move on to the next item. We're running short on time, so let's move on. The phrasal verb move on in this context means continue. You can also say, I'd like to skip item 2 and go directly to item 3. If you would like to give control of the discussion to another person, you can say this: I'd like to hand it over to Brian, who is going to lead the next point. Or, next, Brian is going to tell us about. Finally, it's common for discussions to go off topic. However, you can bring the discussion back to the main point by using one of these phrases. I'm afraid that's outside the scope of this meeting. I think we're getting a bit off topic. We'd better save that for another meeting. Let's get back on track, okay? Getting back to voting. If the meeting uses a formal system of voting, then these phrases will probably be used. When someone wants to make an official proposal for an action, he or she will say, I motion to, or I move to. For example, I motion to hire a new secretary. Then, if someone else agrees with this idea, he or she will say, I second the motion. After that, everyone in the meeting can vote on the idea. To ask for people voting yes, the leader will say, all in favor? The people who want to vote yes will raise their hands. To ask for people voting no, the leader will say, all opposed? And the people who vote no will raise their hands. If the meeting uses an informal system of voting, then the meeting leader will probably say, could I see a show of hands for how many people think we should hire another secretary? A show of hands means that the people who agree should raise their hands. Closing. At the end of the meeting, use one of these phrases to close it. It looks like we've covered the main items on the agenda. That will be all for today. If no one has anything else to add, then I think we'll wrap this up. The phrasal verb wrap up in this context means finish. You can also use a phrase similar to the ones used at the end of presentations, such as, let me quickly summarize the main points. You can also set a date for the next meeting. For example, our next meeting will be on January 29th. Our next meeting will be the first Monday of next month. Our next meeting will be 2 weeks from today. If the date of the next meeting is not yet scheduled, then you can say, I'll let you know the date of our next meeting. You've finished Lesson 12. Now you know all the phrases you need to participate in a meeting in English. We covered a lot of material today, so make sure you take the quiz to practice the vocabulary, and log in tomorrow for Lesson 13, Money and Finance.